Hi, my name's Lauren, and this is the Folk Witch Fibercraft podcast. And today we're talking about how to source your fiber arts materials and tools in as hopefully as affordable a way as possible. So this is the first episode of this podcast, so I figure before we really jump in, I'll tell you a little bit about me and my craft and how long I've been doing all of this. So, hope you have some tea or coffee or something yummy to drink, and let's get started. So, my name's Lauren. I am a folk magic practitioner, a historian, and educator. So, it's a whole lot of things all in one. Basically, I like talking about historical and magical practices, and I am also a fiber artist. I have been working with some type of yarn, spinning, fibery craft since I was little. I have dabbled with knitting and crocheting for a handful of years, and then in college I really got back into crochet in a fairly big way. I was doing hats and scarves and things like that, and then when ye old pandemic came along is when I really stepped up my game. So my whole journey has been very in and out, but within the last 4 or 5 years I've been knitting and recently spinning in a pretty big way, in so much that it has really shaped who I am as a magic practitioner and artist. So by and large, the majority of my crafts tend to be knitting or spinning focused. And I have some of my hand spun yarn back here. Ooh, let's show you. You want to see it? So this is a hand spun yarn that I recently finished. And this is actually a really good example of one of our talking points, and that's how to source your fiber and your tools as affordably as possible. So I mentioned that I'm big into history and into folk magic, and I have sourced a lot of my tools through different events that I go to. But I have a list of about 6 different places that I focus heavily on, and well, let's just start from the top of the list. I've found by and large through my time on YouTube and in other social media platforms with the knitting and fiber arts community is it tends to be split into 2 camps. There's the social media camp where people have gotten into this craft through kind of similar situations where, we're bored, we need something to do, and we happen upon a knitting or crochet video on YouTube or TikTok or something like that. The other camp is also kind of where most of my experience falls, where we are in these kind of adjacent crafts and hobbies where this stuff comes up. So I've been doing, reenactment and historical demonstrations and things like this for a long time. It was a hobby in school, and whenever I am doing any kind of travel or something like that, I try my best to go to historical locations, and you can tend to find fiber arts in those places. So whether you're here from TikTok, YouTube, or random reenactment side of life, sourcing our materials for this can be challenging. It is no secret that the deeper you get into fiber arts, the more expensive it can get. And cost is a very big prohibition for people getting into some of the more niche or complex aspects of fiber art, like spinning and weaving. These tools are incredibly expensive, especially if you buy them straight out. And it can be daunting. I mean, you can find a pair of knitting needles at Walmart, but to find a spinning wheel that is affordable is a challenge. So that's why I want to go through how I've accumulated a lot of my resources, because a lot of this, I think, doesn't get talked a lot about. You'll hear where to get patterns or where to get yarn, but the actual tools themselves can be difficult to ascertain. So, I have my good old-fashioned piece of paper that is crumpled up that I had at work. So, the first and foremost one that everybody's going to be familiar with is just any kind of big box store with a craft section, right? You can go into Walmart, you can go into a lot of dollar stores now. You can find crochet hooks, not a very great selection, albeit, but you can find knitting needles, embroidery stuff, crochet stuff, at least enough to get you started. Now, depending on your feelings about economics and where you source your materials, that might not be the option you want to go with. That is totally okay. I'm kind of in that same boat. I prefer not to shop at big box stores if I can avoid it. But our location of shopping should not be something that prevents you from doing your craft. If you want to get into knitting or crochet, and even spinning, I'll get into that in a second, you can find a way to get those materials at a Walmart. In fact, my first drop spindle I made out of a round coaster that was supposed to be for like a beverage in my room, right? A hook that was to hang a tapestry, just one that screwed into the wall, and then a bamboo stick that was from I think it like a, was it like a wall hanging display or something like that. And I just kind of jumbled those three pieces together when I was sick during ye old pandemic. It was stuff I had around my room, and it did not work well, but it worked well enough for me to wait for one to get shipped to me so I could kind of figure out if it was going to be something I liked or not. Anyhow, big box stores are an option, and that is totally okay to do. Please, if it's between not doing a craft that you want to or being able to craft, go with the big box store if you have to. It's okay. It is okay. The second one are actually going to be things like our thrifty places. So think about like Facebook Marketplace or Goodwill, different thrift stores that are around your area. I found a old style, what's it called? Swift? And it's one that almost looks like a spinning wheel where it's standing on its own little platform and then it has these pegs coming out around, then it spins. That was at a local thrift store for $30 and it was in perfect working condition. These normally could run a couple hundred, depending on how good of a condition you get one and where you get it from. But your thrift stores, you might find somebody's destashed yarn and destashed knitting needles and things like that. Do I have my set down here? No. I found a really nice handmade bag for organizer for straight knitting needles. So it came with a bunch of straight needles in various sizes, and it was a really cute purple on one side and then like a yellow daisy print on the other. Storage organizer for regular size knitting needles. So that was found for like $3 or $4, and that would be a really good starter set. But it was somebody's donated or disposed of knitting supplies that they no longer wanted anymore. Anytime I go to like a Salvation Army or a Goodwill, I can find at least some decent shape acrylic yarn and crochet hooks or knitting needles. That would be enough to get you started. Facebook Marketplace can be handy. I recommend if you're going to use that, A, do it safely, but B, only do it from like local people. Once you start really using social media or your phone or any type of online format to look things up, the algorithms start picking up what you're interested in and will start sending you advertisements and targeted ads for specific things. So on my Facebook Marketplace feed anymore, I get like so totally far away spinning wheels or knitting and crochet supplies that aren't feasible for me to easily get to. So just watch the location when you do that. But again, online kind of thrifty used goods kind of exchange is also somewhere to keep an eye out. Sometimes on other places like Etsy or eBay, you can find people's D-stash there. So I did I think it was only like, it was like 20 mini skeins of sock yarn on Etsy, and I probably paid like $20 for this nice little mini set that was people's scraps. So it was at least 50 grams each little ball. And I used that for some scrappy projects, which was really handy. So, as far as giving it a first try, getting cheap supplies, but supplies that you'll be able to use, Etsy, Facebook Marketplace, your thrifty stores, always a really great option. Next, and kind of along that same vein, is Ravelry. If you are looking for yarn and very specific skeins of yarn, what you can do is go into Ravelry. For those of you not familiar with Ravelry, it is an online platform for knitters and crocheters where you can look at patterns. It's like social media for fiber arts. You can get patterns there. You can also see what yarns people have in their stash and if they're willing to either trade or sell those skeins of yarn. So this is really handy if you've run out of a particular color of something that might be discontinued or hard to reach. Sometimes people have that skein in their stash and they're willing to trade with you or sell it to you. My next one on my list here is going to be things like county fairs or farm shows. And this even more so if you're trying to get into any type of spinning or weaving. Oftentimes a main part or main feature of farm county fair shows is the livestock aspect of it. So you can find often auctions on fleeces from different sheep from shepherds in your area. And that amount of fiber, if you can get a nice fleece, will last you quite a while if you're a newer spinner, or if you don't do it like every day, right? That could be something you could split with a few friends, but it's a really cool way to get as natural of a fiber as possible. It's literally coming straight off of a sheep and then into a bag for people to buy or auction. Oftentimes you will also see best in show kind of competitions. I don't remember what those are called. Oh my gosh. But where you people will bring their best flowers or their best gourds or things like that. They're showing projects and stuff like that. I went to the Hamburg, New York County Fair this year, and they did they had a whole show of different people's artwork, and there was a crochet and knit aspect too, where you could show an Afghan that you've knit or quilted or something like that. So you can submit your own projects for these festivals too and see if you win a prize, which is really cool. You also, kind of moving on from there, can get a ton of supplies at fiber arts festivals. A really handy thing to do is to Google search your fiber arts festivals in the US or the UK or Europe or wherever you are located in this globe, and see if there's any yarn or fiber related festivals or shows or fairs like that. That way you can kind of plan your year a little bit out too if you want. But a lot of times you'll see days where they have gently used spinning wheels or different tools like that. People will bring theirs that they no longer want and buy, sell, trade kind of a thing at these fiber art shows. Plus, if you're like me, buying stuff online without seeing it in person can be a little nerve-wracking, especially for something like a big purchase like a spinning wheel. That's not something you want to just buy willy-nilly. So going to these fiber art festivals can give you the chance to even try out spinning wheels. I was in one in just outside of Buffalo this year, and were a few booths where you could try different brands of spinning wheels and see if you liked one, and that's what finally encouraged me to buy my first wheel. So Fiber Arts Festival's really, really handy way to get your hands on supplies and tools. Plus, you get to network a little bit, and the more you network with people, the better it is to find even more supplies, which brings me on to my next area of searching. Yeah, find fiber friends. So it sounds really silly, but the more people you know, the easier it is for people to gather supplies. So let's see. My at least 5 or 6 of my bigger tool items were gifted to me or I purchased heavily discounted from other Fiber Arts friends. I got a drum carder, a nice decent size manual Brother drum carder, and a literal tub full of fiber from a retiring fiber artist that I know from Renaissance fairs. Val, I love her so much. She's a blessing in my life. She was retiring from spinning and focusing on her wood carving, and she sold me her drum carder, and normally a drum carder is running like $500-600 around there, and I was able to purchase this from her and it was very gently used for $200, which is kind of a steal. But I got it from her, and with that, a huge giant tub full of fiber, actually like 2 of them. It was a ton of fiber. Like, it filled my backseat of my car full of fiber. And it's one of the easiest time savers when it comes to processing wool is a drum carder. But that's not a purchase just to make because you like to do spinning. That's a pretty extensive purchase, something that big, to just kind of make willy-nilly. And I would not have purchased one on my own if Val had not offered me hers for how cheap it was. And cheap is always, again, that's a matter of perspective. $200 is not necessarily cheap, but comparatively to how much a drum carder typically is, that was a really good deal. I also have a childhood friend's mother who has reached out in the last year or so after seeing me post online about my fiber art stuff. And she gave me in medium kind of shape loom. It's like 15-inch wide loom that she found at an antique store that she just gave it to me, along with really good hand carders, which, do I have them here? No, I don't. I don't have, like, anything down here. I should have planned this better. But a set of good hand carders are pretty expensive, too. But she just kind of gave them to me. I was like, oh, okay, thanks. But is this a matter of luck? Certainly. But at the same time, what tends to happen is as people retire or lose their interest in doing a particular craft, or not to be doom and gloom, but as people in the older generation are passing and dying, their family has to get rid of these tools that a lot of people just don't use. It's a dying art, spinning is. So, you know, pretty much at least once a month, there's somebody saying, oh, I wish I knew, like a year ago that you were a spinner, I would have given you my so-and-so's spinning wheel, or we just got rid of this, I could have, you know, a lot of this stuff is sitting in people's attics, and they've been there for 2-3 generations untouched and in decent working order. So sharing that you were a spinner or a hobbyist in the fiber arts is always a good way for people to start kind of getting that idea in their back of their mind that, hey, maybe so-and-so, this person can use it. I mentioned Renaissance fairs, and I work at my local Renaissance fair every summer, and that has been a great way to source fleeces and other tools. There were a handful of people that said to me this season, oh, hey, I have these few things at my house. Let me bring them to you. And I'm like, oh, I won't say no to that. Okay, thanks. But like there's even somebody who raises sheep that I met, and her family raise sheep for food, and they don't partner with anybody to get rid of the fleeces, so their fleeces normally just get thrown away. And she said, hey, if you pick them up, we will give you as many fleeces as you want. I said, rock on, let's go. So, at medieval fairs, Renaissance fairs, and different reenactments, you'll find a lot of textile artists who either are selling handmade things like drop spindles, or ready hand-spun yarn for really reasonable prices, and it's easier to get an idea of how that stuff feels instead of buying like an acrylic yarn from Walmart. I got a couple of really nice handmade drop spindles from a lady at the Viking Festival in Ohio this year, and she made her whorls out of clay, and they were hand carved, and they looked like replicas of historical finds of drop spindles, and it looked like almost kind of like a chopstick with a hook on it. I don't know if she used a real chopstick or how she did that, or if it was hand carved, but those were like $5 drop spindles, and they work pretty well. So at these different historical events, you can find a lot of resources as well. Let's see. The next one, I think that was most of them. Was that most of them? That was fast. So one of the big things I want to caution you with is if you are a new spinner in particular, be very, very careful if you are going to buy any spinning wheels or any fleece processing equipment with just willy-nilly, right? I bought a spinning wheel from an antique shop that was really cheap. It was I think it was like $30. It was cheap enough where I didn't feel bad if I kind of burnt the money. But it was still probably not the wisest purchase for me to make. As a really, really fresh spinner, I did not know what to look for in a spinning wheel. Now, I purchased it, tried a handful of times to get it, not warped. What's the word for spinning wheels? When you do the drive band. Tried to, get the drive band put on, and I just could not get this thing to work at all. I used Jillian Eves' videos to help guide me, and she is just amazing with fiber arts content, specifically about spinning wheels. And I came to realize that the wheel versus the where the bobbin and whirl sits were out of alignment, and to a point where it really could not be fixed. Additionally, the bobbin that was on the wheel was not the original bobbin for the wheel. So it was really not a great purchase. I tried to get it fixed a couple of times, and it just is not working. Which led me to getting my real spinning wheel, which was really exciting. However, this is now just kind of a glorified centerpiece in my house, which I'm not mad at. I think it's really pretty, and I like having it there, and it looks really great next to my fireplace. However, not the greatest purchase. Antique spinning wheels are very, very hard to come by in working order, so be cautious. Do not jump at the first spinning wheel you see. Generally speaking, it's not going to work without a lot of heavy refurbishment, if you can get it to work even with that. Likewise, getting a used spinning wheel is also a little scary if you do not know who it is coming from, and if you cannot test it. This is something you should not just have shipped willy-nilly without being able to try it yourself. People will scam you, and that tends to happen a lot if you look at like Facebook's groups for spinners. You'll see people who are posting, gently used spinning wheel, and below it you'll see people commenting on those posts saying, hey, this is a scam, this person does this all the time, don't buy from this seller. Be very cautious buying spinning wheels secondhand. That's a lot of money to drop on something that might not work. If you're trying to get into spinning, I have a handful of recommendations on where you can start. I think we'll do that as a separate video. If that is something that sounds interesting to you, please comment down below. I would love to hear from you. This is my first real big kid YouTube video, and I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'd love it if you stuck around and hang out with me. So I guess let's do a real quick recap. You can buy things secondhand from thrifty stores or thrifty websites. You can also buy stuff from your fiber friends. So do some networking on YouTube, not on YouTube, well, YouTube I guess, but on social media and things like that. Talk to your grandmas, talk to your old people around you. You'll find people who like to knit, crochet, and spin. I guarantee it. County fairs and farm shows, fiber art shows, and then ye old Renaissance fairs. You might find a couple things there too. So, I will try and leave links down below if I have anything to link, I guess. You can stick around and see what else I post on this channel. I don't know how fancy these are gonna get. I don't know how to edit YouTube videos. We're gonna find out after I finish filming this. I'm on Instagram at the Folkwitch Fibercraft. Ta-da! I think that's it. I will talk to y'all later. Have a great night and be well.